The Ghost in the Wood *. The first time Liam saw the old Carlisle estate, he didn't see rot and ruin. He saw a symphony in weathered cedar and forgotten dreams. *. It stood at the end of a forgotten lane, shrouded by the weeping boughs of ancient hemlocks, its logs silvered by a century and a half of sun and snow. The roof sagged like a tired spine, and the windows were the vacant eyes of the blind. But to Liam, a graphic designer who spent his days in the sterile glow of pixels, it was the most real thing he had ever seen. It was a promise. He bought it for a song, the money from the sale of his late mother's city apartment, burning a hole of purpose in his pocket. This wasn't just a project. It was a penance, a way to rebuild something tangible after failing to hold his own family together. For 6 months, he poured his soul into the cabin. He replaced rotten logs with painstakingly milled cedar, their warm, rosy hue a stark contrast to the silvered old ones. He rechinked the gaps with a traditional lime-based mortar, his hands growing raw and calloused. He stripped layers of paint from the massive stone fireplace, revealing the soot-stained history beneath. The cabin began to breathe again, its scent changing from damp decay to the sweet smell of fresh-cut wood and lemon oil. It was on a perfect, gold-dusted autumn afternoon that he met the outside world. He was on a ladder, carefully hanging a replica 19th-century lantern beside the newly restored front door, when a voice, sharp as a shard of glass, cut through the peace. *. I suppose you're the one responsible for this travesty. Liam climbed down to face a woman in her late 60s, dressed in immaculate athleisure wear, her blonde hair a helmet of perfection. She stood with her arms crossed, her gaze sweeping over his work with undisguised contempt. Elaine McCormack, she said, not offering a hand. I live in the new development on the other side of the ridge, the proper part of the lake. Liam Croft, he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. Nice to meet you. I'm just restoring the place. Restoring. She let out a short, bitter laugh. Is that what you call it? Painting the logs that garish color, putting in those absurdly large windows? You're vandalizing a historical landmark. Liam felt a flush of anger. The logs are new cedar. They'll silver with age. And the windows are to capture the light. The original ones were tiny, meant for keeping heat in, not for living. This isn't about living, Elaine snapped, her eyes narrowing. This is about respect. That estate has been a part of this landscape, untouched, for generations. It was a monument. It was a ruin, Liam corrected, his voice soft but firm. I'm bringing it back to life. You have no right. Her composure cracked, a fissure of pure, unadulterated fury. You bought a corpse and you're dressing it up like a doll. That cabin? It was never meant for some city transplant to play pioneer. Liam took a deep breath, trying to find a patch of common ground. Look, Ms. McCormack, I understand change can be hard to see. But I'm not building a McMansion. I'm honoring its history. My grandfather was a carpenter. He taught me this. It's a labor of love. The word love seemed to detonate something within her. Her face, already tight, went pale. She took a step forward, her finger jabbing the air between them. Love? Don't you dare talk to me about love. You have no idea what you've stolen. Her voice rose, shrill and desperate, echoing through the quiet pines. That land, this cabin, it was my son's inheritance. It was promised to him. You bought his future. The accusation hung in the air, bizarre and heartbreaking. Liam was stunned into silence. He'd bought the estate from a reclusive trust. There had been no mention of family, of heirs. Your sons. I don't understand. The sale was public. It was on the market for years. The trust was a fool. An old, sentimental fool who didn't understand. Tears of rage now glistened in her eyes. My father-in-law, Arthur McCormack. He was the last caretaker of this place for the Carlisle family. He loved it more than he loved his own flesh and blood. He always said it would go to my boy, to David. that he would be the next steward. It was his birthright. Asterisk, the pieces began to click into a miserable, complicated picture. A grandfather dying wish, a mother's fierce ambition for her son. A legal trust that followed the letter of the law, not the whispers of a promise. Asterisk, Ms. McCormack, I'm sorry for your disappointment, but the trust sold it to me. Legally. Asterisk, legally. She spat the word like a curse. This isn't about law. This is about family. That cabin is my son's soul. He spent his childhood summers here with his grandfather. He learned to fish on that lake. He learned to whittle on that porch. You're not just restoring wood and stone. You're erasing him. Asterisk, she turned on her heel, her body trembling with the force of her emotion. Before she disappeared down the lane, she threw one last, devastating look over her shoulder. Asterisk, you mark my words, Liam Croft. This isn't over. You've built your dream on my son's grave. Asterisk, she was gone, leaving behind a silence that was heavier than before. The autumn sun seemed to lose its warmth. Liam leaned against the newly hung door, the solid wood feeling suddenly flimsy. He had thought he was saving a piece of history, but now he felt like a grave robber. He looked at his blistered hands at the cabin that had become his sanctuary. And for the first time, he saw a ghost in it, the ghost of a boy named David, whose inheritance he had unknowingly stolen. The Keeper of Promises asterisk, the confrontation with Elaine McCormack, cast a long shadow over the cabin. Every stroke of the brush, every hammer strike, now felt like a transgression. Liam found himself looking over his shoulder, expecting to see her standing in the tree line, a silent, accusing specter. He tried to research the McCormacks, but found only the barest tracers. Arthur McCormack, deceased, had indeed been the longtime groundskeeper. There was no mention of a David asterisk. His work slowed, his passion curdled into anxiety. He started taking long walks around the property to clear his head. Following the overgrown path down to the secluded, pebbled shore of the lake, it was there 3 days after the confrontation that he saw him, asterisk, a man, maybe a few years younger than Liam's 35, was standing at the water's edge, skipping stones with a practiced, easy flick of his wrist. He had tousled brown hair and wore a simple flannel shirt and jeans. He looked peaceful. As Liam approached, the man turned and offered a small, hesitant smile. His eyes were the color of the lake under a summer sky, and they held a deep, startling kindness. Asterisk, you must be Liam, the man said, his voice calm and warm. I'm David. David McCormack. Asterisk, Liam's heart stuttered. David. The ghost given form. He braced for the anger, the accusations, the demand to leave. Asterisk, I've been expecting to meet you, Liam managed, his voice tight. Your mother asterisk, I know what my mother said, David interrupted, his smile turning sad. She means well. She's always fiercely protective. He gestured to a fallen log. Do you mind if we sit? Asterisk, they sat. The silence between them filled only by the lapping of the water. David picked up a smooth, flat stone, turning it over in his hands. Asterisk, this was my favorite place in the whole world, he began, not looking at Liam. My grandfather. Arthur, he was a quiet man, didn't say much. But out here, he'd tell me stories. He said the Carlyle who built this place did it for his wife, a woman who loved the wild more than society. He said the cabin wasn't built from lumber. It was built from devotion. Every log was a promise. Asterisk, Liam listened, mesmerized. This was the history he'd been trying to uncover. The soul he'd been trying to restore. Asterisk, my mother, David continued, a pained expression crossing his face. She heard my grandfather's stories and twisted them. He'd say, David, this place is in your blood. You understand it. And she heard, this place will be yours. It became her obsession. After Grandpa died, she battled the trust for years. She thought, if she could just get it for me, it would fix everything. Asterisk, fix what? Liam asked softly. Asterisk, David finally looked at him, and in his eyes, Liam saw a profound and familiar sorrow. Me, he said simply. I was engaged once. A wonderful woman. But it wasn't right. For me, I'm gay, Liam. And my mother, in her own complicated way, saw this cabin, this rugged, masculine inheritance, as a cure. A thing that would somehow ground me in the life she had envisioned. When the trust sold it to you, it wasn't just a property she lost. It was the fantasy of the son she wanted me to be. Asterisk, the revelation hit Liam with the force of a physical blow. He wasn't a thief. He was an unwitting player in a mother's tragic denial. Elaine's scream wasn't just about land. It was the sound of a shattered illusion. Asterisk, I'm so sorry, Liam whispered, the words inadequate. Asterisk, don't be. David said, his gaze steady. You set me free. When she came home that day, screaming about you, it was the first time I saw her delusion for what it was. This cabin was never my inheritance, Liam. It was my prison. The promise my grandfather made wasn't about deeds or ownership. It was about this. He gestured to the lake, the trees, the sky, the peace, the silence, the truth of who you are. He wanted me to find a place where I could be myself. He knew long before I did. Asterisk, tears welled in Liam's eyes. He saw his own reflection in David's struggle, the pressure to conform, the grief of not meeting expectations, the desperate search for a place to belong. Asterisk, I tried to honor it, Liam said, his voice thick. I tried to bring the devotion back. Asterisk, David stood and walked toward the cabin, Liam following a step behind. He ran a hand over the new cedar log by the door, his touch reverent. Asterisk, I've been watching you work, David admitted, a faint blush on his cheeks. From the trees, I saw the care you took. Love. You didn't just rebuild a cabin. You heard its song. My grandfather would have loved you for that. Asterisk, their eyes met, and in that shared glance, something silent and significant passed between them. A recognition, an understanding that went deeper than words. The ghost was no longer a specter of guilt, but a man of flesh and blood. Standing in the dappled light of the porch, asterisk, just then, Elaine's car screeched to a halt at the end of the lane. She stormed up the path, her face a mask of fresh outrage. David, I told you to stay away from here. What is he saying to you? Is he threatening you? Asterisk, mother. Stop, David said, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. He walked over to her, placing his hands on her shoulders. Look at it. Really look. It's beautiful. It's alive. It was never meant to be a museum of your dreams for me. It was meant to be a home for someone's truth. Asterisk, Elaine stared at her son, then at the cabin, then at Liam. The fight seemed to drain out of her, replaced by a bewildered, profound loss. She looked at David, truly looked at him, perhaps for the first time, and saw the man he was, the man who didn't need the cabin to be whole. A single tear traced a path through her perfect makeup. Asterisk, she didn't say another word. She turned and walked slowly back to her car, her shoulders slumped. The image of defeated ambition. Asterisk, David watched her go, then turned back to Liam. The autumn air was crisp, filled with the scent of wood smoke and change. Asterisk, she'll need time, David said quietly. We all do. Asterisk, Liam nodded, his heart pounding not with anxiety, but with a wild, fragile hope. He looked at the man before him, the keeper of the cabin's true promise, and at the home he had rebuilt with his own two hands. Asterisk, the door's open, Liam said, his voice barely a whisper. If you'd like to come in? Asterisk, David smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. I'd like that very much. Asterisk, and as David McCormack stepped across the threshold of the 150-year-old cabin, he wasn't claiming an inheritance. He was, at long last, coming home.